It's noon, it's Thursday, so this is Coffee with Ralph, and I'm Ralph Gale, your host. I'm the founder of Fireproof Financial Group. And it seems quite odd to me that, there's times in our lives when we're watching something or reading something, and all of a sudden, uh, clarity happens, I guess is the right way to phrase that. That kind of happened with me a couple weeks ago. And, I'm going to read basically what I journal. I journal, not as often as I think I should, but periodically I'll write something that pertains. And then I read it and went, well, this is exactly the case. And I guess maybe we don't call it what it is. But let me get into it. By the way, coffeewithralph.com is a free 15-minute call with me. So if any of this rings true with you, please feel free to give me a call. I am working with several estate attorneys now to put together a workshop for planning on long-term care, not how to pay for it, but what it is and what I want, what I expect my children to help with, all that stuff, what to do with my pets and my collectibles and my gun collection and all kinds of stuff. Anyways, a couple of weeks ago, well, last week, I was laid up with a back injury, and I thank you for tuning in for a repeat there. But 2 Sundays ago, I was watching 60 Minutes. I don't normally watch that kind of show, but this one had a segment on it called Children of War. And it struck me as maybe they were going to talk about children being displaced by the war over in Israel or Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever, just the displacement of children. That wasn't the topic. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It was about children of soldiers with PTSD and how it affected them or how it is affecting them. And a couple of things became quite clear to me. As I listened to the story of this one young man, about 16, describe his life, he said his home life is always constantly stressful, frantic, and in crisis mode. And I listened to him talk about how he was dealing with this constant state of fear and stress. I realized he was talking about my childhood. I'll get there in just a minute. Because I want to talk about PTSD and caregiving. And how does that relate to this 60-minute episode? I fell for that young man, especially when I heard, with no emotion, him say, well, I tried to hang myself with my dog's leash. And it would have worked had my mom not had found me when she did. It would have worked. Caregiver PTSD. It's a thing, I believe. We call it different things. But back to why it rang true with me, and then I want to get a little bit more into that story. Was from the time I was old enough to remember, we never went to a fireworks display and sat anywhere near it, where you could feel the booms in the ground and flash overhead. And I never understood it until I was old enough and I was told that my dad had shell shock and he couldn't handle the loud explosions, how it made him stressed out. But I remember finding my dad hiding underneath the bed or behind a dresser or in the closet or even in the attic at one point in time after a thunderstorm. An unexpected thunderstorm came in the middle of the night. One case was actually when I guess they were flying something overhead that went supersonic in the boom. And there was no reason for it other than there was something flying supersonic. That's something my dad to the attic to hide. We were told he had shell shock, and a couple other times they said, well, it's just battle fatigue. Well, now we know it as PTSD, but here's the point. It happens with our caregivers. You know, the first story was about this young man and his dad and mom who fought with this, and how the young man got some help for his suicidal tendencies because of his dad's PTSD. But his dad said, if it wasn't for my kids and my family and their love, I wouldn't be here today. I believe that. But then there's a story about a young lady who's 16. She's sitting beside her mom, and her mom explains that for the past 3 or 4 years, her daughter has picked up the pieces she can. She's a teacher. Mom's a teacher. She's the mother of 3, and the wife of a vet whose PTSD is so bad he can't even leave the house. So with her husband's absence, she's got the whole weight of the world laid on her shoulder. On top of that, she said her husband had become suicidal. And because of the lack of understanding and availability of resources, it took them 3 weeks to get the VA to step in to help. Shell shock, battle fatigue, PTSD, caregiving. What in the world has that got to do with our children helping us at home? I read the stories every day on Facebook, on the caregiver support page about these exact things. Battle fatigue. I can't take anymore. What do I do? I can't handle it anymore. What do I do? He's getting violent. I think I said, I've got my note here. Is it a real thing? Yeah, it's a real thing. PTSD and caregiving is an absolute real thing. If these military families are willing to open up about their struggles of caregiving for a vet with PTSD, then we need to understand and prepare for this as well when it comes to us needing care. Especially in this Alzheimer dementia league, because the listing for the drugs that they give these patients now or these victims of Alzheimer's is it'll keep you yourself longer, meaning that eventually you will no longer be yourself. And in one episode of a show, I can't remember what it was, she looked at the son and said, sooner or later, honey, I won't remember who you are. That's what they tell me. Well, if I don't know who you are, I don't care if I'm, compassion and empathy doesn't come into the picture anymore. But PTSD and caregiving, what does it have to do? It's got everything and nothing. That's what I wrote here. It simply matters if you choose to look at this thing with gold, that we call our golden years, through rose-colored glasses, or you're willing to look at it with an open eyes and an open mind. If the rose-colored glasses world, you're going to just not wake up one morning and you're going to be not here. 1 nanosecond, that's what I tell people. That's how we all go, by the way. 1 nanosecond I'm breathing, and the next nanosecond I'm not. So it's not a matter of how I'm going to go. It's a matter of what happens before that. PTSD is real in caregivers. If you'd watch the 60-minute episode, you see that these families are dealing with the exact issue Alzheimer's brings about. The person you knew growing up is no longer the person you are caring for. If they were abusive, that'll get worse. If they're kind and funny, that won't happen for long. And here's why. You've heard me talk about it. The loss of memory is followed by anger and then acceptance, as it did with me. But if I'd lost it slowly, like Alzheimer's does, I can only imagine that the anger that would continue to fester and sooner or later explode in rage not being able to remember some of the simple things in life or some of the important things in life. I look back now and I realize the decisions I made to distance myself, well, that wasn't a great decision. To distance myself when I didn't remember anybody wasn't a great decision. But I had no one close enough to physically reach out and take me home. I can tell you how lonely it is there to be a blank slate, to have no memories. I can only imagine, like I said, what it's like to slowly lose them. The reason I put that out there is hopefully to help you understand that many of those struggling with Alzheimer's isolate themselves from their family, or worse yet, strike out at them in anger. Not really directing it at them, but at themselves for not remembering. You know, there's a commercial that says Alzheimer's patients use sticky notes to remember. Called that at 2, get doctor at 4, sticky notes all over the house for different things. And so they remember what they're supposed to be doing. So here it is. If you're a caregiver whose loved one is living with you, know that the PTSD doesn't go away. Look at the vet who went back. That veteran that had PTSD so bad he couldn't leave the house was diagnosed with it after his first tour in Afghanistan. He didn't say anything to his commanding officer or the medical officer and went back for 2 more tours. He went from a minor issue to one that it could have been addressed easily, to being something so bad that he tried to take his own life. And now he's trapped in his house. Look at the effects it had on that family. Not just the kids, but the parent who knows this is their spouse, but it's not the man they married. I'm not sure how long I've gone on today, but I want to add this. If you think that I'll wait and see is the planning approach for you, think about your grandchildren and the psychological damage they'll be dealing with if you force your children to watch you deteriorate and take care of you while they do. I use myself as an example. I knew no other parents but my mom who struggled with mental illness and my father who suffered with PTSD, then called shell shock, and a host of medical issues caused by that. Our self-worth is a mental stability. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. I'm reading it, so I'm trying to make sure I say it right. Our self-worth and mental stability is guided by our home life. Mine was what I thought was normal. Lack of food, periods dad couldn't work, times when mom was in the mental institution, no heat, no water, no electricity. I thought that was all normal. And I said to myself, I'm going to run from this. And I did. I've never gone without food. Well, I take that back. I did for a while. I lived on the streets. I'll be honest there. Well, I look now and I said, I wasn't running from poverty. I was running from PTSD. And until you look at that and deal with it, it's going to be there. But imagine impressing that on your children and grandchildren voluntarily. I mean, didn't everybody have a home life where it was frantic? It was crisis after crisis. No electricity, no food. Didn't everybody have a childhood like that? The answer is no, I knew they didn't. Did it shape me? Yeah. You bet I'm constantly on the lookout for the next crisis and how to avoid it. It becomes apparent that the old lines hold true. Is it nature or nurture? Which is stronger? And I think nurture is. I guess my question for this session, and this is where I'm going to end it. Are you willing to subject your family, not just your caregiver, but their family, their children, your grandchildren, maybe even your great grandchildren, into being subjected to a nurturing of PTSD, of watching the decline and the aggressiveness that comes along with that decline, so that the memories aren't that of grandpa or grandma was a fun person, but grandma and grandpa or grandpa was, he was mean. He was mean. He was always mean to me. I don't think that's what we want. I've rambled on a bit today, and I do apologize for that rambling, but sometimes I look at these things and go, okay, I have a better understanding of what I don't repeat. I don't want my family to go through, and what I really don't want any of my clients' families to go through. You can't undo PTSD easily. And if you're subjected to it for a long enough period of time, it becomes your life. It becomes who you are, it becomes your identity. Then you have to rewrite everything. And for little guys, seeing grandma and grandpa like that, that's pretty hard to erase from those little memories. Hey guys, this has been Coffee with Ralph. It was a little heavy today, and I do apologize for that. But it's a topic that needs to be discussed openly. You have to think about it and really just decide whether this is the path you want to take. Again, this has been Coffee with Ralph, coffeewithralph.com. We'll get you to my calendar for a free 15-minute phone call. If this is what you want to talk about, great. I'll encourage it. If you want to talk about any other subject that comes up about retirement, whether that be Medicare or life insurance, whatever it is that you've got a question of, feel free to call me, set that time up. I'll give you 15 minutes free of charge. Again, this has been Coffee with Ralph. Everybody have a great